most of the time, we are spending a lot of our time calling people, including cold calling, especially when you start work. You have to cold call strangers quite a lot. So we're calling people, we're messaging people on LinkedIn. I probably have 2 or 3 in-person meetings a day, which means I'll go and have a coffee with either a candidate, or I'll go and visit a client's office and have a chat with them. Most of our meetings are about an hour. And I really like that part of the job, actually. I meet new people almost every day, and it's always one-on-one, and it's usually a coffee in a coffee shop. So you're not in it doesn't feel like an interview environment. You're kind of just getting to know lots and lots and lots of different people. I don't purely talk about business. If I'm meeting someone for an hour, I don't want to just talk about their resume. That's boring for me. And, I don't really care that much. Obviously, I want to know what you do, but I don't want to just talk about your job. I want to know about what you do for fun. I want to know about your life and why you're in Taiwan, and, where you're from, and, are you married? Do you have any kids? Do you have a dog? Do you enjoy music? Do you go to the beach a lot? I prefer having a mix of those types of things. So as a headhunter, you're basically a matchmaker. You're trying to connect good candidates with your clients. And the more you can understand both of the client and the candidate, the better you can do that. Okay, so internal software system and database. So you might think, for somebody like me who's worked in headhunting for 9 years, I think it is, how do you keep track of everyone that you've spoken to and what you talked about and their resume and what jobs you sent them to before and how much money they make and what kind of jobs do they want? So the answer to that is that we all use an internal software system. So in the software system, you would write down all the conversations that you've had. You would have their resume, their phone number, their email, the kind of jobs that they are looking for. All those things are written down in our database. Okay, next part, how do we charge? So headhunters, we would sign a contract with the client, and the average fee we would charge is about 25% of a candidate's annual salary. So at the very, very lowest level, we're charging about 230 to 250,000 NT to find one person. So we're an expensive option. If you're a small company and you're recruiting, a $250,000 NT is our lowest fee, right? And it gets much higher than that. I think my biggest fee ever for one person was about 1.5 million NT, and I've closed quite a few deals that are more than 1 million NT. So, we are an expensive option, and we charge based on the salary of the candidate. So the higher level the candidate, the more expensive the fee is. Okay, what makes a good headhunter? So I touched on this a little bit when I said, I spend a lot of time meeting with people and I like to kind of understand their personalities. I think good headhunters are usually quite high in extroversion, which means they're a bit more sales orientated. They're good with people. You have to be quite charming, and you have to make sure people trust you and that you come across as honest and trustworthy and likable. And you also have to be a bit malleable. So what I mean by malleable is that if you're meeting somebody who is, let's say, a 50-year-old, very serious senior level manager, you have to adapt the way that you talk to them to their personality. Or if you're meeting somebody who's really funny, you want to adapt to that as well. You also want to be funny. So you have to be quite malleable with your personality. You have to be able to talk about anything. You have to be able to talk to different types of people. Yeah, it's really, really important. In terms of the other stuff, the normal things that make you good at a job, especially a sales job, for example, working hard, right? There's no replacement for effort. And in headhunting is a very KPI driven industry, which means there's a lot of key performance indicators in our industry. So if you if you are a headhunter, I just want to check that that's okay. Okay, it's just about the questions. Okay, no problem at all. Yeah. Okay, let's start with the why. Okay, so this is about careers. And hopefully I'm trying to give you guys a bit of an insight, not just into what I do, but into more general what you can do with your entire career. Right. So the why is really important. So start at the beginning. What do you want from your career? So I've listed down the things that I most commonly see people talk about in terms of what they're driving for, what they're looking for. So money, number one. I'll be honest with all of you. Money is the key driver in almost every job interaction that I talk to. The only exception to that would be the really, really senior people who are maybe at the tail end of their careers. Let's say they're 48 or they're 52. And at that point, they're quite financially secure and they don't really need to keep going up in salary. But for almost everybody else, money is such a determining factor in jobs. And often in failed deals in our industry, money is the cause. It's the client has not offered them the kind of money that they wanted to take the job. Money is so important. Even if people think it is not their number one, it often is. When you get down, in English, you'd say get down to brass taxes. When you get down to the fundamental reasons why people are changing jobs, money is number one. Number two, job satisfaction. This is a good one as well. How happy are you in your job? How do you feel like you're making an impact? Do you feel like you're doing something effective? For me, I was an English teacher in Taiwan for 4 years when I first came here. And for me, number two on this list is probably the reason I quit. I was not satisfied. I wasn't happy teaching English. I didn't feel like I was fulfilling my potential as a worker, as a professional. I didn't feel like I was in the right career. Number three, praise. So this is maybe more common in, let's say, America or Canada, where if you do a good job, you would expect your bosses to give you a high five and say, well done. In Asia, maybe not so much. Somebody at an event I was at last night was joking about how Asian companies are a bit like Asian parents. They're very difficult to get compliments from. And if they didn't criticize you, it probably means that you've done a good job. So, praise, it's something that a lot of people look for. It's something that I really enjoy. I like people saying to me, oh, that was great. But praise is something that people look for a lot. Stability. So stability is usually if somebody wants to be, for example, a government employee, it's a sign that they want a stable job. They want a job for 25, 30 years. They don't want to keep changing companies and roles and chasing up the ladder. Stability is something that quite a few people value. They want to do the same thing day to day. Work-life balance, again, in Asia, not very easy to find. I think Korea has the longest working hours in the world, and I think Taiwan might be number two, although I'm sure there's places like Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, where the working hours are crazy as well. Taiwan doesn't seem to be a culture that values a work-life balance. So if you do want a work-life balance, if you want to finish work at 6, you're going to have to work a bit harder to find that type of job. Most companies expect overtime. Okay, number 6, to do some good. So in my line of work, I will work with, for example, tobacco companies, and I also work with gambling companies. I have a client that's in the adult industry called Swag. So they're basically a porn company, oil and gas. I mean, these are all examples of industries that some people don't want to go into because they feel like the industry itself is causing harm. So for example, some people don't want to work for McDonald's or cigarette companies or for gambling companies, and I understand why. So if you want to do some good, maybe you can work in charity, or you can work as a teacher, or you can be a carer for disabled people, or there's a few options. If that's what's most important to you, then you can do some good. you can find a career that works for that type of value system. Okay, number 7, climb the ladder. So this is something quite important to me. I am always striving to improve and get promotions and get a better title and climb that ladder. Yeah, climbing the ladder usually comes with management though. So if you're not a super good manager, you might want to think twice about that. But it's normal to be promoted every 2 to 3 years. And if you're in a situation where you haven't been promoted for 5 or 6 years or 7 years, you have to start asking questions. If I was in your situation, if I had been the same job at the same level for 5 years without promotion, I would be angry about it and I would be creating problems in the office. I would be asking difficult questions and I would be complaining, basically. Okay, what affects happiness in a career? Job function. So some people don't go into the right job function. So for example, I deal with a lot of marketing people, and marketing, you have to be quite creative, right? And if you are a kind of quiet and not very creative person, you probably should not be working in marketing. The same goes for sales. If you don't have that sales personality, it can be very difficult to do that job. I mean, I'll give an example for me. I could never be an engineer. My brain just does not work like that. I could never, ever be a software engineer. I mean, not only do I not know anything about software engineering or coding, I also don't care. I don't want to learn any of that stuff. So the point I'm making is you got to figure out which is the right job function for you. If you end up in the wrong job function, you're going to be fairly unhappy. Stress levels. Stress tolerance is something that you need to have if you want a successful career. You have to be able to deal with pressure and stress. It's really important, especially the more senior you go or the higher up. If you are a manager and you are very emotional as a person, you can bet what your employees are saying about you. I bet they could. The most common reason why people quit jobs is because their boss is over emotional and they have a bad relationship. So on that, boss, management, targets are something that you're going to experience in any career, and it is tied into stress levels. Can you push yourself to get things done, to hit those targets? It's not easy to do. I've been in a job now for 9 years that is always super target driven, and it's tough. It is tough. If you're not hitting that target, you can feel really low, for sure. Colleagues, in terms of happiness in a career, colleagues are so important. I don't think you have to be best friends with everyone you work with, but if you feel ostracized or you feel left out or you don't really like your colleagues, or even in extreme cases, if you're being bullied in the office, it's really not good. It's really sad. The product, sometimes the product that you work with can affect your happiness. So for example, if I worked in high-tech components or semiconductor, I don't think I would be that happy because I find that product boring, right? And for you, that might also be the case. Maybe if you work in fashion, you find clothing boring. So the point is, you figure out a product that makes you happy. Overtime and office aesthetics. So aesthetics in an office, you might not think that it affects your mood, but often it does. So if you want to work in a nicer office, sometimes you have to find those bigger, nicer companies. Like startups are quite famous for having nice offices. Google is a prime example. There's a couple of kind of gaming, creative arts, digital graphic studios in Taipei that are just gorgeous. They're really comfortable and cozy, and they've got games and toys in the office and lots of cool posters. So if that's the kind of thing that makes you happy, then you can aim for that. Okay, let me give you some job hunting tips. So how to look for better jobs. So number 1, my best tip is always the more direct, the better. So directness in applications. A lot of people think the best way to find a job is to go on LinkedIn search for jobs and you see one that you would be good for, and then you send your resume in. Or you go to Ealing C, you go to 104 and you search for jobs, you see one that's relevant, and then you apply. Okay, that is a really passive way of getting a job. Okay, it's lazy. The best way to get a job is to go straight to that person who is hiring. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you want to work for TSMC in Hsinchu, and you see that TSMC are hiring. What then I would do is go either try and find a referral into HR or into the sales director or into the engineering head, or you could go on LinkedIn and you could add the HR and send them messages about, I'd love to work for TSMC. I saw that you're hiring. Or even more aggressive than that would be to call, to find the phone number for TSMC, to call and then say, hi, I'd like to speak to Valerie Chen in HR. And then you speak to Valerie and you say, hi, I'm a candidate. I want to work for TSMC. Is it okay if I send you my resume? Right. So these are all different ways that you can get in aggressively. It's not always easy to be aggressive with job searching, but it does make you more likely to find a job. Okay, number 2, maximize every resource. So friends, family, LinkedIn 104. You have to be a little bit shameless when you're looking for a job. And that means asking people for favors, asking people for help, messaging people directly. Like when I was in Shanghai, I wanted to work for Nike because I love sports, and Nike was my dream company. And so I added everyone in Nike on LinkedIn and I messaged all of them. I even walked into Nike's office in Shanghai and handed in my resume. So, and another thing I did, I posted on Facebook, hi, do I know anyone who works in Nike? And then a friend of a friend did and set me up, and I went for dinner with her and she helps me get my resume in there. And also a Portuguese author who I'm friends with, his brother works for Nike in Amsterdam, and he also helped me get in there. So maximize every resource. You really have to think outside the box if you want to get a good job. Okay, you can't just be lazy and just send in resumes to open jobs, especially if you're a foreigner. Often what happens with foreigners in Taiwan is they will be sending in resumes to jobs and they won't be getting any feedback, not rejected, no emails, nothing. They're not getting anything. So you have to figure out your way how to get jobs if that's your situation. Customize your application for different jobs. Okay, so let's say you've seen a job posting online and you want to apply for it. This is another sign of laziness, is you just send your CV. Okay, you don't edit it at all. You just send the same CV that you send to every company. Sorry. So the best way to get a job is to look at the job description, look at what they're looking for, and then maybe edit your CV with some keywords to fit into what that job is asking for. So I'm not suggesting that you lie on your resume, but I am suggesting you cater your resume to the job that you're applying for, at least a little bit. Take your career step-by-step, long-term thinking. This is really important, and it's something that I find young people tend not to understand. If I was to be critical of some of the younger people that I've met in Taiwan through my job, they often have expectations for jobs that are unrealistic, right? So what I mean by that is they want to be a management consultant, or they want to work for Google or Tesla or Airbnb or Netflix. Okay, and I'm not going to tell you that you can't do those things, because obviously you can, but you're aiming super, super, super high. Okay, those types of companies are very difficult to get into, and they also care about academic performance more than you would know, right? So if you did not go to Harvard, it can sometimes be difficult to get into McKinsey and Google. these types of companies than Tesla. There are, of course, there are exceptions. So take your career step by step, long-term thinking. What I mean by that is that maybe think about taking a stepping stone or two before you get into your dream company. So if your dream company is Google, maybe the first job that you get could be in a small software company, a small software startup. And then the second job you get could be in, maybe Oracle or maybe Microsoft, and then you go into Google. So steps. Or Tesla, let's say your dream company is Tesla. Maybe you work for another, I'm trying to think of the Taiwanese company's name. There is an electric car manufactured in Taiwan, but maybe you work for one of those types of companies, and then you can apply for Tesla, and then they would see your CV as fitting. Okay, CV more than one page. So the stereotype in America is the one-page CV is the best fit. I've had some battles with Americans over this because they all think one page is enough. I don't know how many of you heard if Elon Musk can do one page on his CV, then so can you. So that I'm not a fan of that at all. I think 2 or 3 pages for a resume is best. And the reason I say that is because you can give a lot more information about what you did in specific jobs. Headhunters and HR are looking for keywords. So if we're hiring a front-end developer, we want to see the words front-end developer on the CV a bunch of times. Like HR and headhunters, we're simple creatures, like we're just looking for the easy fits. Like HR especially are quite a small c conservative group of people. They're not outside the box thinkers. They're more of that kind of admin-y type personalities more often than not. Obviously, there's exceptions. I'm not trying to be rude, but most of the time, they are the first barrier to enter any company. And they're not looking at your CV thinking, oh, maybe if we try them out, they could be amazing at this. They're not, that's not who they are. They're not outside the box thinkers, right? Next one, try to get internal referrals. The best way into a company is through somebody that you know inside that company. Definitely. That is 100% the best way to get a job. So, if you can get an internal referral, then you should do it. I can give you an example. I mean, I interviewed with Google probably 3.5 years ago. And if I had applied for Google, they never would have contacted me. There's no way. And the way that I got interviewed by Google was because I know an American guy that's based in Google Shanghai. And I spoke to him. I gave him some advice about the Taiwan market. And then he said, come and work for us. And he referred me into HR directly. And then I think I did 3 rounds of interview, and then they failed me out because my Chinese wasn't good enough. How dare they? Okay, next one. Speak to headhunters in your industry or function. That's not supposed to be an F. That's supposed to be an R. So speak to headhunters in your industry or function. So when I spoke about headhunting at the start, I said every headhunter will specialize. So for example, after this chat, if you work in finance and you're an auditor, let's say, or an accountant, and you message me, I'm just not going to be able to help you, right? That's not what I do. I don't do auditors and I don't do accountants. I don't do engineers. I don't do supply chain. I don't do HR. So you have to find somebody who specializes in what you do. LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is absolutely the best platform to network and find jobs. You can add anyone on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is not Facebook. It's not there for you to add your friends in real life. You can add anyone in the world on LinkedIn. And often you can message them once they add you. So if you want to work in Taipei and you want to work for MediaTek, I would add everyone in MediaTek and start messaging them. Networking, the more networking you do, the better. It's so much easier to get a job from a networking event where you have a pleasant conversation with somebody, and usually they're more likely to help you out. Like I was at a networking event last night called Thriving on B2B Island. So it had 4 speakers who all work in business to business industry, and they were talking about their experience with marketing and sales. It was really interesting. There was probably 150 people there, and I had conversations with maybe 10 or 15 people. It was really nice. It was really nice. Being good at networking is kind of similar to being good at making friends, right? You have to kind of be a bit charming and a bit funny, and be able to be a bit freestyle with the conversation. You have to be able to talk about different things. You have to be able to talk about yourself a little bit, but not too much. You have to be able to also ask questions and listen to that person. Like, networking is to do with soft skills. Like, how strong are you with soft skills? How likable are you? These types of things can be difficult to gauge, but very, very important for career. Okay, so advice for recent graduates. This advice can pertain to anyone, though. It doesn't have to be for recent graduates. Although if you're getting this advice as a 40-year-old, I don't know if it's too late, but it's maybe too late. Okay, so number 1, don't quit a job before 1 year. So in headhunting and HR, we call people jumpy. And I realize that's a made-up word, but jumpy means somebody who changes jobs too often. So let's say if I look at your resume and you quit that job after 4 months, and then the next job, it took you 5 months to get it, and then you quit that job after 5 months, you might think that you're still a very good candidate, but I don't think you're a good candidate. I'm probably not going to send you to any jobs. HR not going to give you interviews. And the reason for that is that we will label you as unreliable, okay? Whether that is fair or not, right? Your resume tells a story about who you are, and HR and headhunters, we're looking for red flags, okay? We're looking for reasons to be concerned about your potential ability as a colleague or as an employee in my company. Okay, number 2, put your head down. Graft and grit are still very important. I mean, I think I don't need to explain this to you guys. If you're a recent graduate, the most important thing that you can do is work your butt off, like get into that company and prove that you are a good potential young employee. Okay, this might come across as a bit harsh, but especially for the smart kids, it can be academics, high school, university. It can be easy, right? If you're smart, then passing tests, it's not that hard. It's kind of easy. Whereas in the working world, there's no shortcuts. There's no shortcuts. I mean, I can tell you a story based on my own resume, my own career. So I did really well in high school. I was a straight A student. I found high school really easy. I got a scholarship to go to boarding school in Canada when I was 18. I did well in university. It was all easy. I didn't struggle at all. And then I became a headhunter, and there's no excuses with headhunting. The KPI is on the board. The amount of money you made, it's right there for everyone in the office to see. If you're not closing deals, you can't just turn around and say, oh, no, it was not my fault. It's these other reasons. And for me, it was a real wake up. It was a real cracking of the whip. It's like, there's no more excuses. I have to work hard or I'm going to fail. And it was a real wake up. It was a real realization. Yeah, it was good for me, actually. It's good for me, I think, in the long run. Okay, find a work-life balance that makes you feel like you're achieving something. It's hard to do in Taiwan, but give it your best shot. Learn new skills, but in an organized way. So what I mean by that is, if you are a salesperson, sorry, that's my baby screaming. If you're a salesperson, you probably want to focus on sales jobs. It's not a good idea to have a resume that has too much of different things. Like if you were a translator and then you were a salesperson and then you did social media and then you worked as a recruiter, these is too much jumping around. You want to learn new skills, but you also want to focus on becoming an expert within your job function. Like I said before, HR and headhunters, we're not out of the box thinkers. My baby's been joined by my dog screaming. That's fantastic. We're not outside the box thinkers. What we want quite often is we want to find someone with exactly the right experience from a different company and put them into, let's say, if you're looking for a marketing manager for Nike, we're looking at the marketing managers in Puma and New Balance and Adidas and trying to make them go to Nike. That's how we work. That's how HR works. We're not outside the box thinkers. So you've got to focus. Okay, be ambitious, but also realistic. I touched on that. That's what I was talking about with the Tesla stuff and Airbnb and Google and stuff. Speak to people who know the market, but take negativity with a pinch of salt. So when you're deciding what to do with your career, you do want to ask around and you want to speak to people who maybe work in different industries and get advice, but the take negativity with a pinch of salt thing, that is about not always listening to people who complain about their jobs and about their industries. It's very common for people to not enjoy what they do. As a headhunter, I listen to people complain about their jobs a lot. So I'm going to tell you that that's just the way it is. It's very common for people to, let's say if they're lawyers, they think that the law profession is not great. Or if they are architects, they think architecture is really boring. Or you will even find it with academics. People who work in academia, they will often say, oh, don't become a professor. It's too boring. Go into a corporate job. Okay, next one, internships are always good. So when you're a recent graduate, your resume is almost blank. You have almost nothing on your resume. And so what makes you stand out are the people who have the added extras, the tennis team, some work experience, some internships. Like when I was younger, I did 2 internships at a record company in London. I worked for Warner Brother Records. And I also did a bit of an internship with The Big Issue, working with homeless people. And my added extras were things like music. I sang in the choir and I played in a couple of bands and I played sports. I played tennis and football. So these kind of added extras on your resume, it fills it out and makes them look interesting, because if you don't have that, it's basically a blank piece of paper. There's nothing to differentiate you from other graduates. Okay, soft skills are just important as hard skills. So soft skills are what I talked about with being likable and funny and making good eye contact and being charming and being presentable. I think is kind of part of soft skills as well. Hard skills are things like that will actually get you job interviews, things that you have experience with, like engineering or front-end development or supply chain software systems, this types of thing. Okay, interview skills. This is really important because if you don't interview well, you are not going to get given jobs. Even in my industry, we on average will send probably 10 people forward for a different job, and only one of them is going to get the job, and the other 9 candidates are good, right? So if you don't interview well, you're not going to get offers. Okay, so number 1, obviously, prepare well. So preparing involves things like researching the company, looking through the website, going on LinkedIn and finding out who's going to interview you and seeing what their background is and reading into the job description, really understanding what the job description is looking for. That's how you prepare well. I did see somebody on LinkedIn complaining about job applicants adding them on LinkedIn before they've met them. I don't know if I agree with him, but you might want to keep that in mind. If you are interviewing with somebody, maybe don't add them. Maybe just look at their profile, and then once you've met them, go back and then add them. Soft skills are more important than hard skills in interviews. So I don't know if this is a harsh reality or not, but the people that interview the best, the most likable people are the ones that get jobs. They get job offers. The kinds of people that I make money from are the people who are just super likable. You meet them and then you think, wow, they are really impressive. You want to invite them out for lunch next week. They're those types of people. They're very likable. So that's soft skills. Okay, dress well. A hard truth is that you're much more likely to get the job if you look good. Okay, so again, this might come across as a little bit harsh, but it's an absolute reality. Better looking people find jobs easier. Okay, it's going to be a bit harsh. It might come across as a bit unfair, which is probably true, but the better looking you are, the easier it is for you to find jobs, even in the corporate world. And so what you have to think about is how you present yourself. You know, does your shirt fit? Is your hair cut? I mean, here's another example. In Taiwan, if you have bright pink hair, or you have 10 earrings, or you have a tattoo on your neck, I mean, you are obviously making things difficult for yourself, right? When I was an English teacher, I had a bunch of festival bracelets and I had an earring, and I took those off. I took the earring out and I cut the festival bracelets off, and I bought some nice clothes, some suits basically. And, you know, that's probably a good idea. Okay, react to the interviewer, mirror them. This is what I touched on before when I was talking about being a good headhunter. So what I was saying is that you kind of have to mirror the personality of the person that you're meeting with, which means that if the person that you're speaking to is very serious and they're not smiling, then do the same thing. Be very serious and don't smile, don't joke around. Whereas if the person is very relaxed and comfortable and funny, maybe try and mirror them as well. Although, be careful what you say in a job interview. It's still a job interview. If the person that you're speaking with is super casual, don't make the mistake of thinking that they are your friend. You know, it's still a job interview. I mean, if you want to know a secret, quite often I am very casual when I meet with people, but I'm still judging everything they say, right? Think about that. Okay, make the interview a two-way conversation. So if you think that you go to a job interview and then the interviewer asks all the questions and then you reply, that's what a job interview is, in your opinion. The interviewer asks the questions, you reply, I think you're not going to get that job. A good job interview is a chat, a conversation. You ask them questions, they ask you questions, you explain a little bit, and then you follow up. And like, that is a much better situation, a two-way chat. I've had a few interviews over the past 9 years where the person I spoke with for an hour, they didn't ask me one thing about myself, not one thing. They didn't ask me where I was from, nothing. And I'll be honest with you, I kind of hated those people after the interview. I was bored. You know, maybe I like talking about myself too much, but the people that I was speaking with, it was like they expected me to just keep asking them questions. I don't know if you've ever been in a conversation with somebody who does that, but it's so frustrating. It's so unlikable. You know, they're just talking about themselves the whole time. They don't ask you one question. You ask them 15 questions and they don't ask you one. It's rude. You know, don't do that. A good job interview is a chat, a two-way conversation. Okay, next one, avoid cliches. So this is to do with being honest. So if somebody asks you, let's say, what's your biggest strength? And you said, oh, I work really hard. I don't know. Or what's your biggest weakness? Oh, I'm a perfectionist. These types of answers are really not impressive. I think be honest, Yeah, be honest with interviewers, not too honest, but be honest with interviewers, be sincere, try and be likable, all that kind of stuff. Guys, I am seeing that there's questions in the chat kind of popping up. We've got a little bit of time before we get to those questions, but I will get to them, I promise. Okay, have questions prepared for the end of the interview. This is something that I think a lot of people make the mistake. So if you do an interview and it lasts 50 minutes, almost every job interview, the interviewer will ask you at the end, do you have any questions for me? And you better have questions ready, and they better be good questions as well. Oh my goodness, if I were you, I would over prepare questions. I would think of 50, no, maybe that's an exaggeration. I think of 8 really good questions you can ask at the end of an interview. Things like, if I take this job, where do you see my career going in the next 5 years? Like, where would you see me going within the company if I start in this role? Or you could say, can you tell me what you really like about working in this company? Like, what do you think are the best selling points of this company? Or you could say something like, would it be okay if you tell me ideally what you're looking for? Like, tell me what is the ideal candidate you're looking for this position? Because then they would say, oh, this, and this, and you can maybe counteract and say, well, maybe I'm missing this, but I think I have this, and this. So you can be smart with the questions at the end. If they ask you at the end, do you have any questions for me? And you say, no, I think I'm good. You're not getting that job. You are not getting that job, okay? Okay, I've put in brackets something. If they answer during the chat, be flexible. So this situation, I have literally seen this happen a bunch of times where somebody has prepared questions for the end of the interview, and then you get to the end of the interview and then they have the questions ready, but the questions are stuff that you've just spoken about. And then you're asking them to repeat something that you've just spoken about. It basically just makes you look stupid. So be flexible. Show motivation. This is really important. Okay, the people who really, really, really want the job, those are usually not the people that get the job. But at the same time, if you don't show real motivation, you're also not going to get the job. So I would go, in terms of keenness, I'd go aim for a 7 or 8 out of 10. Don't be a 10 out of 10 keen. Honestly, I know this is kind of sad, but if you go for a job interview and you're just really, 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 really want the job, often it's a red flag. People don't like that. It's like if you have a girl or a boy that you like, that you fancy, and you're just so into them and so intense and stuff. I mean, do you think they're going to like you back? That's just not really how it works, right? Salary negotiation. Salary negotiation's really tough. Oh man, it's so tough. Even for me, I've been doing this job for years and years and years, and I still find it difficult. Okay, I can give you some basic advice, like don't give people a range. If somebody says, what salary are you expecting? And you say, oh, maybe something between 55,000 and 70,000 a month. Don't give them a range. I would just say 70,000 a month. And also don't lowball yourself. If you say, let's say, what salary were you hoping for? And you say, my expectations, 65,000 a month. But actually, that's not what you want. That's too low for what you want. Don't do that to yourself either. I would be honest, but you got to be careful, because if you overprice yourself, you're also not going to get the job. I mean, look, there's no easy solutions. Like I said, I've been doing this job for ages and I still find salary negotiation really difficult. And for us, we have the budget already. Like, we know how much they can pay, and it's still difficult. Often when you're interviewing for a job, you have no idea what their budget is. Their budget could be 200,000 a month. It could be 50,000 a month. You have no idea. Okay, using LinkedIn effectively. Okay, be thorough. So fill out everything. That means really complete your LinkedIn. If you want to see a good LinkedIn, I think go to mine, because I spend so much time on LinkedIn that I obviously think my own is quite good. And I talk about LinkedIn all the time. If my own LinkedIn wasn't good, it would be a bit embarrassing. So if you want to see a good, or what I consider to be a good LinkedIn, search for my name, Alan McIvor. But fill out everything. That's how that's how the algorithm works. The more data you have on your page, the easier you are to find. Connections are obviously the most important thing. Like I said, LinkedIn's not Facebook. Excuse me. Just add everyone, especially relevant people. So if you are a supply chain expert, add everyone in supply chain that you can find. Just network. And I mean everyone. I think I've got 25,000 connections. I think that's a good thing. Just add everyone, especially most of my connections are in Taiwan. I try not to add people who are kind of irrelevant. Like, I have a lot of people add me from different places in the world, and sometimes I'll reject, but you kind of networking through connections is the most important thing. My best piece of advice is the next bit. So once you connect with somebody, you can message, call, or email. I would send a message to every single person I connect with. I would recommend that. Even if it's something like, "Hi, Sonia, nice to connect. Hope you're doing well. Best regards, Alan." I send a lot of those messages. Or if it's somebody that I want to work with or meet, I'll send a longer message, maybe catered towards their CV. Like, I send messages with things like, "Hi, David, nice to connect. Your CV is actually really impressive. I'm a headhunter. Excuse me. I'm a headhunter in Taiwan. If you want to have a chat, let me know." I send a lot of those types of messages. Connect with the right people. Think about how you phrase your messages. So I'm going to teach a class at Jiao Tong University next month. And Jiao Tong asked me to focus on email professionalism. So they think, and I see this a lot as well, there can be a lack of professionalism in your written messages or emails. And it's easy to do, and it comes across as super unprofessional. So you have to, I mean, obviously I can't write this out right now, but I always do the, "Hi, David, comma, space. Lovely to connect, comma," I'd put in exclamation marks. At the end, I put "best regards, comma, space, Alan." Like, be professional with your written English. Like, missing out in capitalization, punctuation, grammar mistakes, spelling mistakes. These are all major red flags. Major red flags. When I write out a message, I always double check it. Sometimes I will probably send something with a mistake, but hopefully rarely, if not ever. Okay, LinkedIn should have a professional picture. That's really important. I would even go as far as going to a studio and taking a professional picture. Like, I paid one of my colleagues, Serena, her boyfriend's a professional photographer, and I paid him something like 20,000 NT to take, I think I got 18 photos or something like that. So I got 18 professional photos taken, and I can use those for LinkedIn or for news articles or podcasts or advertising, or when I get interviewed by newspapers, I use them. Sometimes it's worth the money, Professional picture. If your picture is a selfie with a glass of wine, just don't do that. And also have a picture of yourself. There's something really uncanny about people on LinkedIn who either don't have a picture, or their picture is like a sunset or whatever. It's like you kind of have to have a picture of yourself. It's almost like There's something that the human brain does. When you can see a picture of somebody, you associate them with the resume. If you don't have that, I think you're causing yourself damage. Okay, the learn how to search properly. That's called, hold on a second. That's called a Boolean search, and or but. So what that means is, if you want to search for people in the pharmaceutical industry who do sales, you can do pharmaceutical in inverted commas, and then you do and capitalized sales, and it will give you people who are a combination of those two things. So if you just Google Boolean search, it's quite interesting. Yeah, paying for it sometimes worth it. Sorry, no pun intended. That wasn't supposed to be dirty. Paying for it means there's a bunch of professional LinkedIn services that you can use. I think I pay 600 US a year, something like that. So it's not super cheap, but when you pay for it, you get unlimited searches. You can send in-mails to people who haven't connected with you, which means you can just send messages to anyone in the world. It's useful sometimes. Okay, we've got like 4 minutes left. Okay, specific industries and roles for foreigners. So startups and foreign-owned SMEs. SME means small, medium enterprise. Startup market's much better for foreigners because it's more Western and younger, and you can work remotely, and it's cooler and less traditional. So startup market's a good place for foreigners to work. It's not as much money, but it is easier to get into, and it's easier to make an impact. Number 2, hardware. So gaming, computers, peripherals. Peripherals are things like keyboards, gaming mouse, iPhone cases, like, circle lights. Like I've got one of these stupid circle lights. These types of things are computer peripherals, right? There's a lot of those players in Taiwan. Memory sticks is another example. The kind of little component-y type stuff. There are tons of jobs for foreigners in those companies. It's the most common employer. Because, for the next point, Taiwanese companies selling into the international market, they will hire foreigners because they are a Taiwanese company based in Taiwan that are selling into South America, North America, EMEA, Australasia. They're selling Southeast Asia. So they will always hire like an Indonesian to do the Indonesia market, or a Thai person to do the Thai market, or a German to do the European market. Like, you understand what I'm saying, right? These are the most common jobs. Engineering, there's lots of jobs for engineers, software, hardware, semiconductor. These are the most common places. Internet and app is also good for the same reason the startup market is. It's younger and cooler and more westernized and more American style, and work remote, and everyone playing for the same team, all that kind of quite modern type techie, jargony stuff. Education industry and edutech. So these are kind of language learning apps, or education industry could be like editing textbooks, or even like Skyrock projects, or sending people to study in the States to different colleges. There's lots of different jobs in education. Hospitality, obviously been hit by COVID a bit. Part-time project-based work. So part-time based work is good if you don't really know how to find a job and you're struggling to find a job. Sometimes getting 3 part-time jobs can then get you a full-time job, kind of step yourself up on the ladder. Different cities. So Taipei is the best place to be if you're a foreigner in Taiwan looking for a professional job. Taoyuan is quite good for manufacturing. Hsinchu is good for semicon. Taichung's good for the bicycle industry. Kaohsiung's not good for anything. I'm just joking. I'm not really joking, unfortunately. For foreigners in Kaohsiung, it's a bit tough. I don't really know what kind of industries or opportunities there are for foreigners there. I know a lot of you are based in Kaohsiung. I'm going to get in trouble for that, right? But, 'tis the reality. If you're a foreigner and you want a professional job, the easiest place to do that is Taiwan and New Taipei City, undoubtedly. The most difficult job options for foreigners, HR, because of the Mandarin admin side, legal for the same reason, government relations, again, very difficult unless you're doing kind of foreign stuff. Strategy and policy is very difficult. Sustainability is difficult because most companies still don't really care about being sustainable. It's more fashionable in the West than it is here. And then top tier MNCs. So the most difficult jobs to get here for foreigners are at the very best companies like Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, PepsiCo, Unilever, Nestle. These types of companies rarely hire foreigners. Okay, stop sharing. So, thanks. That was exhausting. Okay, I think we're gonna move into the question and answer session. So,
Yes.
is that right, Andy?
Yes, that's correct. Are you able to hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Let me just try to open up the Pigeonhole then. Okay. Perhaps these are some of the questions that have actually been addressed by Alan just now, like, how to negotiate for a salary and assess my market value and etc. Maybe we can go for something. Or Alan, do you have any?
I mean, the one that got the three votes, how to negotiate for a salary and assess my market value, is very difficult to do. I mean, the average out of university salaries for, maybe 55, 60 is good. 80,000 NT a month is good. It's healthy. And then once you have a job and a salary, all of your other salaries are negotiated based on that. Okay, let me repeat that. So if you're in a job and you're making 65,000 a month, when you change jobs, the way you negotiate salary is by saying, my current salary is 65 and I'm hoping for 80. Okay, an average salary raise in Taiwan is probably 10 to 20%. You can't double salary. The salary game works in percentage increases when you change jobs. That's how the game's played. Hope that's helpful.
Yep. How about we go to the other question that talks about, I think there are two that actually are quite similar, that talks about the CV and resume. How do I actually make it more attractive, especially for a fresh graduate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's all about the added extras. How do you think fresh graduates make their CV resume attractive enough? Okay, so obviously you want to put your academic performance. Like I said, I did well in high school and university. So my first ever resume really emphasized the fact that I got all A's, right? I made it really obvious, A, like A chemistry, A English, A maths, because I thought that would make me stand out. Because companies want to hire people who are smart and likable. So if you can show that you're smart and hardworking and interesting, that's good. So adding internships, adding, maybe you have an Instagram following that's 10,000. Maybe you traveled through India. Maybe you worked in Bangladesh with underprivileged orphans. Like, I don't know. Like, any of these added extras are good. A blank CV is no good. But anything that makes you a little bit more interesting is something that you should do. Yeah.
How about we go to the next question? Because I think you did mention about HR being a very hard career for foreigners. How about for Taiwanese?
Oh, it's a good career for Taiwanese, for sure. The reason I said that HR is a bad career for foreigners is just because there's hardly any foreign HR in Taiwan. It seems to be, even for me, right, who has been doing an HR recruitment job for so many years, yeah, HR is just, it's so admin focused that it's better if you're Taiwanese. But HR is a good job. I mean, I work with HR every day. It's a good job. It can be very well paid, you're well respected. There's lots of promotions you can get. There's different parts of HR, like you can do admin, you can do executive assistant, you could do C&B, which is compensation and benefits. You could do HRBP, which is more like a kind of strategic role. You can do the recruitment side. There's lots of aspects of HR. It's interesting.
There's actually one of the questions that was raised during our registration that actually talk about wanting to start a career as a headhunter. So what do you think, in your opinion, are some of the traits or some of the jobs that maybe a fresh grad should look out for in order to head towards the direction?
You have to be very good with people. You have to be very good with people, very high in soft skills. Like, you don't need to be very smart to be a headhunter, and you don't really need to know about the industry. You can learn about that stuff, but you do need to be very good with people. You need to be presentable and charming. Presentable is a euphemism that we use that means good looking. So most headhunters are on the better looking side. It's a bit like retail in that sense. And good with people, like charming and interested in people. Like, if you find people really interesting, then that's a good thing. Like, for example, I'm super extrovert, so I could spend all of my time with people. I don't need my alone time to recover. If you're one of those people who kind of prefers being on your own to recharge, headhunting is probably not a good job for you. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I saw another interesting topic that asked about the suggestion for a graduate from an MBA program in Taiwan if they wish to start a career abroad. Do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, move abroad, right? So that might sound like a really flippant response, but let's say you are Taiwanese and you just graduated National Sun Yat-sen University MBA and you want to move to Italy. If you're applying for jobs in Italy, but you're still living in Taiwan, you are going to get 0 interviews. I promise you that. 0, right? The best way to get that job in Italy is to book a flight and move to Italy and then start looking for jobs. That might sound like a gamble, and it is a gamble, but it's so much better doing it that way. Same if you want to work in Singapore, go to Singapore, or Shanghai, go to Shanghai, or Japan, go to Japan. If you're sitting in Kaohsiung and sending resumes to Japan, you think companies are going to hire you and then wait for you to come to Japan? They're not, basically. They're not. It's very difficult to do it that way. Very, very difficult.
How about we go for the next question that is the most upvoted? They actually talk about what are the chances for fresh foreign graduate to get a good job in Taiwan, which you briefly mentioned.
It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. If I were you, if it was me, I would be heavy on LinkedIn. Heavy networking, going to every networking event that you can. I would be approaching companies to do unpaid internships, right? And I know that might sound like, oh, are you kidding me? But that's what I would be doing. I would be let me just tell you something. The first foot in the door for foreigners in Taiwan especially is the most difficult by far, right? Getting your foot in the door is so difficult. And so once you get your foot in the door, your options increase exponentially. So I would do anything you could to get that initial foot in the door, like messaging people and asking for internships and even paying for it. I mean, there's a company called Pagoda Projects that do paid internships. So, yeah.
I think apart from the question that they have actually raised in Pigeonhole, I think there are some also in the questionnaire during the registration that talks about they don't really know what kind of career they should be heading towards to
Yeah.
in the MBA program. So perhaps you can share some insights.
I mean, it's a really good question. If you don't know what kind of career or what kind of industry you should be targeting, don't freak out. That's kind of normal, but you should be trying to work it out. I mean, like trusting your instincts is important. Like, yeah, if you are naturally interested in technology, go into technology. If you're more into people, maybe you could go into more or hospitality or headhunting or something teaching, something that involves a lot of people. Like I said, marketing tends to be more creative people. Sales tends to be more kind of charming, high extroversion people. Supply chain and finance seem to be more conscientious people, very organized, right? Like do a personality test and figure out what kind of personality you have. Because if you don't have the right personality for the job you choose, you're going to really struggle. And in terms of industry, just try and think about what you're interested in. And, maybe put down some no's as well, like definitely not cosmetics, definitely not tobacco, definitely not oil, maybe wind energy, or maybe I quite like gaming, or maybe I quite like beauty, right? Have some yes and no's, but put some thought into it. Like really do think about it.
Okay. I've saw one very interesting question on the chat box actually on Zoom.
All right.
It talks
Okay.
about wanting to become a HR candidate in the e-commerce firm. So let me see. Most headhunters are searching for candidates on LinkedIn. So what should we have? What are kind of the keywords that we should have in the LinkedIn if I wish to start a career in the e-commerce as a HR professional?
I would have e-commerce as well as various forms of e-commerce. So e-commerce is sometimes spelt different ways. Like you can spell it e-com or e-commerce or big E, big C, or no dash, the way that you spelt it, e-commerce. So I would have the different ways like that. And I would also have things like growth marketing, overseas, channel. These are the kinds of keywords that you hear in e-commerce a lot. But you were saying, in my case, I'm interested in working as an HR for an e-commerce company. So I would Google e-commerce and then figure out how many different companies you can write down, like Shopee, PC Home, Momo, Yahoo, Teamson, Channel Bakers, Moshi, right? Write down all of those companies. Friday is another example, and then start trying to message the HR and all of those different companies and tell them who you are and that you want to work as an HR. Yeah. The more direct, the better.
Yep. Just wondering, did I get the question correct?
Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Okay. I think there's another question that came from Perm, like, what is the better way to apply for a job between referral from headhunter and employee in that firm?
What is a better way to apply for a job between referral from headhunter, employee in that firm? Employee in that firm is way better. Way better. Okay, think about it this way. If, let's say you want to work for Adidas, okay, and you know someone that works in Adidas and they give your resume to HR, the HR is going to say, oh, Tony has a friend who wants to work here. That's perfect, right? For a headhunter, we send them a lot of resumes that get rejected anyway. And if they choose to hire you through us, they're going to have to pay a lot of money, 300,000, 400,000 NT. So your resume better be perfect for that job. Okay, let me explain something to you. Headhunters don't help people change industry or change job function. Like what we do is we find something very specific Okay, so let's say Adidas are looking for a marketing manager. Maybe you want that job, but what Adidas want is a marketing manager who also has sports and retail marketing experience. So they want the marketing manager from Puma or New Balance or Nike or Under Armour. That's who they want, right? They're not looking to give you a chance because you've done some marketing in a SUS. That's not what they're looking for, and that's not what we are looking for either, and it's not what we're told to look for, right?
Okay, maybe we will open up to the floor right now to see if there are any other burning questions that you have for Alan.
Yeah, sure.
For people who are online, maybe you can just unmute your mic and ask. If not, for people in the physical class, do you have any questions that you would like to ask?
Hi, Alan. Could I ask my last question? I think I asked a
Sure.
lot of questions. For in about the salary negotiation, for example, in my case, I have got the past salary before I come here around 50,000, but I know that one of my ex-colleague that she just got a new job that I really want to work for, around 100,000.
Nice.
Yeah, but she has more experience than me, 20 months, and also she got the salary before that around 70,000. So it's kind of increased around 40,000, 40%, right? So in this case, if I want to apply for that job, so what kind of the salary?
Listen, I know what you're asking. I know what you're asking. So basically the answer is no, you cannot get 100,000, right? That's just not the way, right? So in that case, you know, somebody in that company's got 100,000. They went from 70 to 100. So maybe for you, if you're going for a similar job but slightly less experience, you can look at her 100,000 and ask for 75, you know, because they might say, okay, what was your previous salary? And you're saying, well, it was 50 before I completed my MBA, right? There's an argument. It was 50,000 a month before I did my MBA. And I'm hoping for 78,000 a month. I'll be honest with you. I'm hoping for about 78,000. Yeah, that would be my advice for negotiating. I mean, they might, I don't know, they might give you something better than that, but you know, salary increases are usually done based on previous salary. So it's easier to kind of jump up slowly. It's very difficult to double up.
But do you think it is still possible to increase around 50%, right? In this case, because
I've seen that very, very, very rarely in my whole career. I almost never see somebody make big jumps. Never. Never. If anything, I see people take pay cuts, like people coming from Singapore and Shanghai back to Taiwan, like 50% pay cuts. I see that more often. Yeah. Does anyone else have no problem? Does anyone else have a question before we finish?
Yes, I think Charlie has one more question that talks about, as a foreigner, how important is learning Chinese to get a job? The ones in your list in Taiwan.
Yeah, it's really important. It's really important. Of course it is, right? The better your Chinese is, the better you will fit in, the more chance you have of getting a job. I mean, companies are not hiring you to be just another Taiwanese person. Usually they're hiring you for a specific reason. Like if you are Indian, maybe they want you to target that market, or if you're Indonesian, they want you to target that market. I mean, they're not hiring you to just be Taiwanese, but at the same time, you make people so much more comfortable with you if you speak decent level of Chinese. And you do not want to be the person in a meeting that's forcing everyone else to speak a second language. That's not fair. Like you can't be doing that. Like, I'll give you an example from my own experience. We have meetings with 20 colleagues and they're all speaking Chinese fine, totally fine. I can understand everything that they're saying, but then it comes around to me and I speak English and they can understand what I'm saying, right? So I'm not forcing anyone to do anything, but I'm also speaking the language that I'm more comfortable in. And, you know, it works out, right? So yeah, I think you have to have at least a basic level of Mandarin. If you go to a job interview here and say, I have nothing, it's just too easy an excuse for the company to use. It's too easy for the company to say, oh, no Chinese, no. Just too easy. Yeah.
Great. So if there are no other questions, I guess we are just right on time. It's exactly 9 o'clock. So before we go off, perhaps can I just invite everyone to take a photo? For people who are online, maybe if you want, you can turn on your webcam. Those who have already turned it on, please don't turn it off. And then for the people who are physically at the classroom, can I invite you to the front of the stage, front of the classroom, so that we can take a photo? Thank you.
It's so weird seeing everyone's face. I've just been speaking to a computer screen for an hour and a half. You guys are real? Wow, you guys are real.
Yeah,
Wow.
They are all over.
Wow, it's all real people. It's amazing.
Let me just go take a photo.
Okay. Next time I'll come down to Kaohsiung. See everyone. Try and get Sun Yat-sen to pay for my Gautier.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hope that was interesting.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry for the delay at the start because of a technical issue, and hope you guys enjoyed the session. So we have actually recorded this session, and if you want, we will upload this onto the Google Drive, and also we'll pass a copy to Alan, and you can actually go to his website, his YouTube link, to actually find out more about his sharings that he has conducted in the various universities and all. So yeah,
Cool.
Thank you, Alan.
Thanks. Cheers, guys. Have a lovely night.
Bye-bye. So for people who are here physically, have you all marked your attendance? If not, you all can come to me first. Your attendance. If you have not marked your attendance over here in the attendance sheet, can you come over to me? Your Robert. Can I have your? You can just enter your student ID. Sorry.
There you go.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you.
那些 those who have already filled in your attendance, you may leave. You may take your leave. Oh, for Professor Lu's student, right? Do remember to sign up for the subsequent events so that you all don't have to come all the way to attend the physical class anymore. Yep. Please. Oh, 这个吗？啊，
对对对，
可以，如果你已经填好你的那个学生 ID 的话，就可以走了。
我有刷会议的链接，然后这里也没有说教室在哪里。
你是卢教授的
是什么？
我是
你有
透过那个，
谢谢。
谢谢。
学校 mail 的那个，
诶，你的 email 是什么？我找找看。
因为我收到你寄给我这个信，但是问题是你就是好像里面没有提在哪里，然后我就有些问号。
哦，你是说你收到这个信？
对对对，
那你起初有没有收到其他的？
没有哎、
因为这个只是 reminder 你是什么 email？
我那时候应该填 SKY35，
SKY35
有吗？
有你的应该是这个吗
对对
？SKY35
对对对对，
诶，你要那这个的话，你可能要看你的那个，
我有去那个垃圾信箱找过了，
我
没有看。
来看看你的，希望不会在你的垃圾上。
因为我刚刚绕了一圈，最后才在这一间教室找到。
OK，我直接打你的，SKY35
呀，
这个啊，同学，诶，为什么你没有收到 SKY35？对不起，那真的是，诶，为什么里面没有啊？奇怪。
哦，
对不起，那就是我这边的不好，抱歉。下次不会再发生了，谢谢。对不起。
好，那就没有问题。
好，谢谢你，
谢谢，
拜拜。
哇。